Nana Shimura. Nana Shimura's death occurred during her direct confrontation with All for One, who overpowered and ultimately killed her. This fight took place during a period when hero society was both weaker and less structured, making her one of the few individuals capable of opposing him. Her death marked a crucial turning point because she served as the seventh user of One for All, entrusted with stopping the growing threat of All for One. Despite her strength, the clash ended with her execution, leaving behind both the power she carried and an emotional legacy that influenced the next generation of heroes. Her death
tragedy this turned out to be
also created a cascading effect within the Shimura family. By dying in battle and being forced earlier to abandon her son to protect him from villains, Nana unintentionally set the conditions for future tragedy. The resentment her son developed toward hero society shaped the environment in which Tenko Shimura grew up. Without Nana's presence, her grandson endured abuse, emotional neglect, and eventual quirk awakening under extreme distress, eventually becoming Tamura Shigaraki. Thus, the very act of Nana dying to protect the world indirectly contributed to creating the villain who would later threaten it. Nana's death further shaped the psychological development of All Might, who inherited not just One for All, but also her instructions, regrets, and hopes. The memory of how she died, cut down by the world's most dangerous villain, pushed All Might to overextend himself chronically, striving to embody a symbol that could carry the burden she was forced to relinquish. This emotional inheritance is central to All Might's narrative arc and ultimately influences Deku as well, proving that Nana's death affected every major protagonist connected to One for All. Magne. Magne died when Overhaul touched her with his quirk, causing her upper body to explode and disintegrate instantly. This was not a prolonged fight. It happened in a single, decisive moment during negotiations between the League of Villains and the Shigaraki. Magne attempted to attack Overhaul, and in response, he killed her without hesitation or warning, establishing an immediate power imbalance between the two groups. Her death marks a turning point in Shigaraki's development. Seeing Magne killed while the League was being treated as expendable triggered Shigaraki's resolve to evolve beyond childish impulsivity and begin strategic thinking. Her death becomes the catalyst for him recognizing the importance of organizational structure, discipline, and tactical superiority, foundations for his later rise to power. Finally, Magne's death symbolizes the ideological conflict between villain factions. Magne embraced personal freedom and individuality, while Overhaul enforced strict hierarchy and order. Her execution is the narrative embodiment of that ideological clash, foreshadowing the eventual collapse of Overhaul's organization once the League strategically dismantles it from within. Overhaul's executed subordinate. Overhaul executed one of his own followers.
Barely took my eyes off her. The kid made a break for it. And cleaned that up
by using his quirk to obliterate the man after he failed to keep proper track of Eri. Instead of using his ability to repair the subordinate's body or discipline him less severely, Overhaul erased him instantly, leaving nothing behind. This act was meant to reinforce his authoritarian rule and emphasize that errors would not be forgiven, even when committed by loyal members of his inner circle. The death highlights Overhaul's obsession with order and control. His quirk gives him the ability to disassemble and reassemble matter, making him capable of healing virtually any injury or reversing almost any physical mistake. By choosing destruction over repair, he reveals his psychological rigidity. Imperfection must be removed entirely, not corrected. This worldview directly mirrors his long-term goal of fixing quirk society by eliminating quirks altogether. Narratively, the death foreshadows Overhaul's downfall. By treating his subordinates as disposable, he undermines the very foundation of organizational loyalty needed to sustain a long-term operation. When the League eventually betrays and dismantles the Shigaraki, it is Overhaul's own leadership philosophy that enables their destruction. The subordinate's death is thus not just a punishment, it is an early sign of Overhaul's inability to maintain sustainable power. Sir Nighteye. Sir Nighteye died after being fatally impaled during the battle against Overhaul's transformed form. His injuries were too extensive for even advanced medical treatment to reverse. His foresight quirk allowed him to predict the future, including his own death. Still, he chose to fight, hoping to create a possibility that deviated from the tragic outcome he had foreseen. This clash between determinism and hope lies at the core of his final moments. His death reinforces a major theme: the limitations of prediction in a world driven by emotional willpower. Nighteye built his professional philosophy around logic, probability, and minimizing risk, making his death a symbolic failure of the methodical mindset he embodied. The fact that he could not prevent his own fatal outcome even with foresight highlights the inherent unpredictability of quirks, combat scenarios, and human decisions. Night-Eye's death also marks the end of All Might's previous support system. As one of the last remnants of All Might's prime era, his loss further isolates All Might and intensifies Deku's responsibility to inherit not only One for All, but the emotional burdens of those who carried it. The manner of Night-Eye's death, choosing to fight despite knowing the consequences, cements him as a tragic embodiment of the hero ideal. Snatch. Snatch was killed during the attempted transport of Overhaul to prison, when Dabi burned him to death during an ambush by the League of Villains. Although Snatch's sandform quirk allowed partial resistance against decay, sand is highly vulnerable to intense heat, allowing Dabi's blue flames to overwhelm him quickly. Snatch was immobilized and incinerated before he could neutralize the threat. The death exposes a critical vulnerability in hero operations. Even after a successful raid, heroes remain exposed during transfers and cleanup phases. Snatch's role involved escorting a high-value prisoner, but inadequate backup left him susceptible to coordinated villain interference. The ambush demonstrates that the League was beginning to act strategically, targeting moments of structural weakness in hero logistics. Narratively, his death emphasizes the shifting balance of power. The heroes believed the Overhaul operation was complete and under control, but the League used this transitional period to reassert dominance. Snatch's death is a symbolic reclamation of influence for the League and foreshadows the destructive ascent they would experience leading into the Paranormal Liberation War. Hood. Hood, the first high-end Nomu introduced, was killed when Endeavor burned him with sustained heat and flame output beyond the Nomu's ability to regenerate.
It seems appropriate.
Despite possessing multiple offensive and defensive quirks, including flight, enhanced strength, and rapid cellular regeneration, Hood eventually succumbed when Endeavor pushed his flames to their absolute limit, destroying Hood's tissue faster than it could rebuild. The nature of Hood's death reveals critical information about Nomu limitations. While high-ends possess enhanced regeneration, this ability is not infinite. Extreme temperatures can exceed biological repair rates, providing insight into how certain quirks can counteract seemingly unstoppable opponents. Hood's death therefore serves as a demonstration of quirk dynamics and their hierarchical relationships. Furthermore, Hood's death foreshadowed greater threats by revealing how far villain science had advanced. The Nomu program had evolved beyond mindless brutes into strategic combat organisms capable of speech and independent decision-making. Hood's existence, and his eventual demise, signaled that far more advanced creations were likely waiting, paving the way for Shigaraki's monstrous evolution later in the story. Twice died after Hawk stabbed him during the Paranormal Liberation War.
I can't keep up. I won't make a mistake because
acting under orders to eliminate the single most dangerous quirk user on the battlefield. Hawks intended to restrain and arrest him. But when Twice panicked and attempted to create clones to defend Toga, Hawks was forced to deliver fatal blows to stop him from producing an overwhelming clone army. Twice managed to crawl toward Toga, but the version that reached her was only a clone, which dissolved after expressing his final words. His death represents a shift in hero methodology. For the first time in the series, a hero kills a villain not out of self-defense, but out of strategic necessity. Hawk's decision demonstrates how far the hero society had fallen into desperation. Twice's double quirk was capable of replicating entire armies, making him effectively a one-man apocalypse. Eliminating him preemptively altered the battle's trajectory and prevented countless hero casualties. Twice's end also highlights the tragedy of a man whose fractured sense of identity culminated in dying while protecting the only people who accepted him. His psychological trauma made him vulnerable, yet it also drove his unwavering loyalty. The fact that he died apologizing for causing trouble reflects the heartbreaking sincerity that defined him. His death is not only a tactical elimination, it is a narrative turning point that deepens both the moral ambiguity of the heroes and the emotional turmoil of the villains. Exless. Exless was instantly disintegrated by Shigaraki's decay upon the villain's awakening in the underground facility. After damaging Shigaraki's containment tank, Exless approached to assess the situation. The residual sparks from his earlier energy blast reactivated the life support systems, prematurely awakening Shigaraki. Upon waking, Shigaraki touched Exless's head and activated an evolved form of decay that spread rapidly, killing Exless before he had any chance to react or escape. Narratively, Exless's death signals the true beginning of the large-scale catastrophe that follows. It is the moment where the war transitions from a coordinated hero offensive into a devastating collapse of defenses led by an unstoppable antagonist. Exless becomes the first casualty of Shigaraki's ascension, marking him as a narrative boundary between the world before Shigaraki's evolution and the world after it. Crust. Crust died after shielding Aizawa from Shigaraki's expanding decay, sacrificing his own life to preserve the only hero capable of suppressing Shigaraki's powers. The decay spread rapidly across surfaces, and Crust interposed himself between it and Aizawa, using his barrier quirk to buy seconds of time. Those seconds were enough for Aizawa to escape, but not enough for Crust to survive. The decay consumed him completely, reducing him to dust. His death is a demonstration of perfect tactical decision-making in a crisis. Crust recognized instantly that Aizawa was the most crucial asset on the battlefield. Without his ability to erase Shigaraki's quirks, the heroes would have fallen almost immediately. Crust sacrificed himself not in a symbolic gesture, but in a calculated, strategically optimal move that directly prolonged the survival of everyone present. Structurally, his death removes one of the more competent high-ranking heroes at a critical time. The shield hero's defensive abilities would have been invaluable against the relentless destruction that Shigaraki unleashed on the battlefield. His sacrifice prolongs the battle but weakens the hero's long-term survival chances. Crust's death carries both immediate tactical benefits and long-term strategic consequences for the hero faction. Water Hose. The hero couple known as Water Hose died during a rescue mission after being attacked by a villain known as Muscular. Their quirks were strong for environmental control and rescue operations, but not optimized for high-level combat. As a result, they were overpowered despite working as a coordinated duo. Their deaths were not glamorous nor part of a large-scale battle. They died in the type of everyday scenario that reveals the constant danger embedded in hero work, especially for heroes who specialize in non-offensive roles. Their deaths were never animated in the series and are only referenced in dialogue and backstory, emphasizing how many losses in hero society occur off-screen, yet still shape the world and its characters. Their deaths had profound emotional effects on their son, Koda, who developed a belief that quirks and hero society caused his parents' deaths rather than preventing them. This hostility shaped his worldview during the UA training camp, where he rejected the idea of heroism entirely. His subsequent endangerment during Muscular's attack and Deku's protection of him reflect the narrative impact of Water Hose's absence. Their deaths push Koda into situations that test Deku's early heroism and contribute to Deku's emerging identity as a protector. The couple's deaths also show how the consequences of villain attacks ripple through society. Their absence creates emotional instability for Koda, prompting him to isolate himself and inadvertently placing him in lethal danger later. The chain reaction that follows demonstrates how the death of even relatively mid-ranked heroes can alter the trajectories of future events. Water Hose's deaths are therefore not isolated incidents. They shape multiple narrative threads, from Koda's development to Deku's reinforcement of his heroic ideals. Oboro Shirakumo. Oboro Shirakumo died during a hero training mission when a collapsing building crushed him while he was rescuing civilians. His death was sudden, physically destructive, and occurred before he ever became a full pro hero. Although his death was not animated in the series, it still hits deeply because of how profoundly it shaped the lives of those who survived him, becoming a defining emotional trauma for Aizawa and present Mike. The nature of his death, the result of structural destruction initiated by a villain rather than a direct blow, illustrates how hero work often turns the environment itself into a lethal threat. His body was later stolen by All for One's organization and transformed into Kurogiri, a Nomu engineered from Shirakumo's remains and quirk factor. Although Shirakumo died on impact, the preservation and repurposing of his corpse created a morally complex scenario wherein his physical identity continued to function as a villain support unit. The emotional consequences of Shirakumo's death manifest later when Aizawa and present Mike confront Kurogiri. Seeing their friend's body and quirk repurposed into a villain weapon resurfaces unresolved grief and forces them to confront the consequences of the hero system's failures. This transforms Shirakumo from a background memory into one of the most tragic figures in the series, whose death shapes both morality and conflict across multiple arcs. Eri's father. Eri's father died when her rewind quirk activated uncontrollably and erased him completely. His death was instantaneous and irreversible, as rewind works by reverting a living being to a previous biological state, in this case, to a point before he existed. Like the deaths mentioned before, this moment was not animated and is only known through dialogue and backstory, yet its impact is unmistakable, with no remains, no recovery, and no possibility of intervention. His death marks the first catastrophic expression of Eri's power, and sets the stage for the trauma that defines her childhood. His erasure caused Eri's mother to fear her daughter and abandon her, believing Eri was too dangerous to keep. This led directly to Eri's capture by the Shi Hasaikai, where Overhaul exploited her quirk to develop quirk-erasing bullets and subjected her to years of experimentation. Without her father's accidental death, Eri would not have fallen into Overhaul's hands, and one of the story's darkest arcs would not have unfolded in the same way. The absence of her father and the circumstances of his death profoundly shape Eri's emotional development. She grows to associate her own existence with harm, believing she destroys everything she touches. His erasure becomes the root of Eri's fear, guilt, and self-suppression, issues that continue long after her rescue and require extensive emotional rehabilitation from Deku, Mirio, and Yue.